Good afternoon, I'm Sean Yao, and this is One News Now. President Bongbong Marcos has signed the MAHARILIKA Investment Fund Bill into law 6 days before he delivers his second State of the Nation address, or SONA. The new law establishes a sovereign wealth fund where the government can choose to invest in various outlets. These include foreign currencies, commercial real estate, and infrastructure projects.
For the first time in the history of the Philippines, we now have a sovereign wealth fund designed to drive economic development. Through the fund, we will leverage on a small fraction of the considerable but underutilized investable funds of government and stimulate the economy without the disadvantage of adding additional fiscal and debt burden.
Reactions to the MAHARILIKA Fund's approval were swift. Bantay Bigas, Dakilusang Mambubukid ng Pilipinas, and Amiha National Federation of Peasant Women took their protests outside the Department of Agriculture's headquarters in Quezon City. The progressive groups believe that food security should take priority over the MIF. And for her part, Budget Secretary Amina Pangandaman welcomed the signing, saying that the bill will expand the country's fiscal space for the government's priority programs. And for House Ways and Means Chairman Joey Salceda, the new law will, quote, bridge the gap between investable funds and projects. On the other hand, Ibon Foundation's Executive Director Sonny Africa has a different take on the MAHARILIKA Fund's impact.
Sabi na pinaka-problema dun sa MAHARILIKA Fund, niloloko tayo. Nagkukunwari na para may kalahating trilyon piso na mula sa wala. Hindi yung totoo. Even yung sinasabi na target na seed fund and up to the 500 billion na kikreate, malaking bahagi doon ay galing sa iba't ibang bulsa ng gobyerno.
And President Marcos's predecessor, former President Rodrigo Duterte, met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Monday. President Xi reportedly assured former President Rodrigo Duterte of steady and sustained relations between Manila and Beijing. Xi also wished that Duterte can continue playing an important role in promoting friendly cooperation between the two countries. For his part, Duterte thanked his former Chinese counterpart for supporting the Philippines, especially during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Duterte and Xi's meeting happened right smack into Manila and Beijing's sea dispute and the Marcos administration's warming ties with the United States. Meantime, China claims that the U.S. is collaborating with several countries to pressure Beijing into accepting the 2016 Hague ruling. They even referred to Washington as the, quote, mastermind behind the arbitration case, which rejected China's sweeping claims in the West Philippine Sea. And in just about 2 hours, the International Criminal Court, or ICC, will be releasing its decision on the Philippine government's appeal against the resumption of the drug war probe. The ICC's appeals chamber will rule whether it will go ahead with the investigation or have ICC prosecutor Karim Khan throw out the probe altogether. Should the court decide to continue investigating, it could request arrest warrants against certain Philippine officials. That is, if the ICC finds enough grounds to do so. Nevertheless, Justice Secretary Boying Remulla is adamant that the Philippines will not be enforcing any arrest warrants coming from the ICC. Time to take a quick break, but One News Now will be back with more stories after that. Stay with us. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Sean Yao. The Commission on Audit, or COA, has reminded state broadcaster PTV4 that it has yet to settle some 75.8 million pesos in notices of disallowance, or NDs, over an ad placement deal from 2017. This deal was between former Tourism Secretary Wanda Tulfo-Teo and her brother Ben's show on PTV4. Recall that COA flagged payments made to Ben Tulfo's Bitag Media back in 2017 due to the lack of supporting documents and conflict of interest. State auditors issued these notices of disallowance to call for the disbursement of funds if a government agency fails to justify an irregular transaction. The two NDs were issued back in May and June of 2019. In COA's 2022 report, the notices have been marked under appeal. Bitag Media is owned by Ben Tulfo, which produces the show Kilos Pronto, a news and public service program that aired on PTV4 at the time that his sister Wanda Tulfo-Teo was the tourism secretary. Back in 2021, the Ombudsman dismissed the graft complaint against Teo, Tulfo, and other PTV4 and DOT officials, saying that Teo was unaware that Kilos Pronto was owned by her brother. In other news, Makati Mayor Abby Binay believes that Taguig does not have the capacity to service some 322,000 EMBO residents. Recall that the Supreme Court has ruled with finality that the EMBO barangays are part of Taguig City. Mayor Binay told The Big Story that residents in these barangays will no longer be eligible for benefits that they've been enjoying as Makatizens. These include free hospitalizations and tuition fees, including school supplies and uniforms. Binay noted that the EMBOs are currently not self-sufficient, and thus, Taguig will have to find ways to ensure that residents receive the same benefits.
Almost 8 billion pesos ang kailangan nila to be able to finance my 322,000 constituents. The taxes generated in that area is so small, it's so negligible as compared to the social services that's being received by that area.
Mayor Binay also clarified that the University of Makati and the Hospital ng Makati will still be catering to Makatizens, even as the structures will now be under Taguig's jurisdiction.
The university and the hospital will still be owned by the city government of Makati that will cater to Makati residents. I will not be able to cater to the residents living in the EMBOs. Taguig will have to pay for their tuition if they are studying in the University of Makati. Taguig will have to pay for their hospitalization if they end up in hospital ng Makati.
And here is a quick look at today's other top stories. Oil companies implemented a big-time oil price hike today, Tuesday. Gasoline prices are now up by 1 peso and 90 centavos per liter, while diesel is now pricier by 2 pesos and 10 centavos a liter. Kerosene prices have likewise gone up by 1 peso and 80 centavos a liter. The Energy Department says that the price hikes are on the back of OPEC's planned supply cuts and higher global demand. Cash remittances sent home by overseas Filipino workers went up to almost 2.5 billion pesos in May. The Bangko Sentral says this is higher by 2.8% compared to the 2.43 billion pesos sent home in the same month last year. The increase in remittances is driven by inflows from the United States, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia. Analysts attribute this to slowing inflation in OFW's host countries, as well as better digital banking services. On to the weather now. The low-pressure area embedded within the ITCZ, or Intertropical Convergence Zone, is forecast to bring significant amount of rains within the next 3 days. The Caraga region, Camiguin, Misamis Oriental, Bukidnon, Davao Oriental, and Davao de Oro are seen to experience the most rains. Pag-asa is warning of possible floods and rain-induced landslides due to the expected downpour. One News Now will be back at 3:15 p.m. I'm Sean Yao. We are One News.